Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability.
I'm Andrea Anderson here with Chip Dodd. I'm interviewing him again because he did another race on his own, solo, after the Cowboy Tough. So this race that we're going to be talking about in this episode is the Bears Ears 8-hour race. It was in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And this has been quite a summer for Chip, for both of us, actually. We did the Expedition Colorado. A week later, Chip did the Cowboy Tough. And then now a week later, Chip did the Bears Ears. So he's been out west for several weeks. And I guess we'll start from there. Chip, how did you find out about this race? It seems like in the East, we feel like, well, there's not many races out west, but yet you went out there and found races. So what's going on out there?
Yeah, I mean, we came out there to do Colorado, right? That was our we wanted to go visit your family and do Expedition Colorado. And then it was a little bit of a bold move to go up north and do a 24-hour race less than 7 days after doing Expedition Colorado at the Cowboy Tough.
Totally.
And I thought that was it. After that, it's like, oh, I'm off the clock until Worlds. We can just go look around the West and have fun and do adventuring. But so the guys, I met these two cool dudes. It's Eric and Kenny, who were the third place team at Cowboy Tough. And I was chatting with them after the race and kind of explaining, yeah, I'm just kind of vagabonding around the West, living out of my van and yada yada. And they're like, oh, well, there's a race next weekend called the Bears Ears. And I was like, really? Where's that? They said it's in Steamboat. And I was like, where's that? And so I'll do a quick screen share if for people that are watching this on YouTube. I'll show where Steamboat Lake State Park is located. It's basically very north Colorado. So this on the screen, there's this big cluster of stars in Denver area. So this is basically, you got to go northwest from Denver, go over one big mountain range, go down through a valley, and then back up. But it's Steamboat's a very popular ski town. It's like one of those quaint little towns, typical of Colorado, where it's just beautiful and quaint and skiing and all this fun stuff. Lots of restaurants and things like that. But either way, this state park.
So you were getting to it from the Cheyenne area, though, right?
Yeah, I was coming down south to get to it. Yeah.
How long of a drive is that from where
I
you
don't
were?
remember. It felt like 6 hours or something like that. But I left Cheyenne and went west and went and did some big epic hikes. And so I had a whole week to get done with Cowboy Tough, go do some adventuring, and then make my way down to Steamboat with a couple days to get prepared and everything. So I mean,
relatively close as far as things
yeah,
go out west, relatively close.
right.
That's pretty cool and pretty lucky, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. When they told me about it, and I was like, 8 hours. That's a long drive down there. And I was Andy Erickson and Paulette had invited me over to come into South Dakota, Black Hills, and so I was like, I wanted to go hang with them, and I was like, wait a second, maybe I can go do the race and then hang out with Randy on the way home after we dropped you off at the airport and all of that. So I kind of hemmed and hawed about it, and then signed up. And then the sign up was it was too late. I couldn't sign up, so I reached out to Jessica, who we had served together on the ARC board, the Adventure Racing Cooperative, before them and USARA got together. And so she knew me, and I think she just let me slide in there as a solo, but also warned me, I don't think we've got enough kayaks, so you might have to use your own boat. And
Well, slow down for a second.
Yeah.
You're talking really fast.
Sorry.
Let's tell everybody, when you're talking about Jessica, she's the race director of the Bears Ears.
He's the race director. So I'll do another screen share just to show you that it's 361 Adventures.
Okay.
And I think this is part of the Rocky Mountain Adventure series, I think is what they called it. There's a whole bunch of race directors that cobbled together kind of a series. And then there's prizes for whoever either wins a certain number of races in the series or gets enough points during the series. But it's really kind of neat. And a lot of the people, they do travel around and do a lot of these races.
That's really cool.
So yes, so Jessica was the race.
You were allowed to sign up last minute.
She opened up registration an extra day just to let me slip in there, and one solo, and she knew I was kind of out here just by myself running around doing stuff, so she was nice enough to open it up.
But with the caveat that you might need your own boat.
Yeah, she
So
it was too late for normally the race directors cut off registration for a reason, like they either need to order the t-shirts or the permits or the boats and renting boats. And she basically warned me, like, I don't have a kayak and you can't use a canoe. So as long as you're willing to use your own boat, I think that was the agreement. And I was like, no problem. I've got a 2-person, MRS pack raft. I'll get by with that,
yeah. And so did you use that?
No.
Jumping ahead a little bit, but
I did well in this race, obviously, or not obviously. I would not have done well.
You're so confident. Obviously I did well.
No, I mean,
So that's already the spoiler alert. Chip did win this race, but anyway, go back to the boat. I just had to tease you a little.
I assume the people who listen to our podcast probably also follow us on Facebook and watch our videos. And the Bears Ears video came out with a Chip coming across the finish line with just seconds on the clock, as is my norm. But but we're gonna get into the how did I win it? It wasn't because I did anything right; it's because some other folks had a little error. But either way, so let's move on. So I know I'm going into this race. I'm still tired from Cowboy Tough and Expedition Colorado, so I know I'm a little bit weak, but I was acclimated at least. But I knew I was going to go in there and give it my best shot. And I'm looking at this like MRS, thinking there was a big paddle section. It was quite a ways, and I guess we can do some screen sharing for people if they want to see for those of people that are watching on YouTube, they can see the race maps as we're talking. So but basically it's the Steamboat Lake State Park, and it was a big body of water, and the points are pretty spread out. And I'm there looking at the lake and thinking of the MRS, and I'm thinking, if there's any wind, I'm screwed. I'm very nervous about this. But luckily I'm at this campground, and I was pulling all my bikes out and getting things tidied up for the race and making sure everything is working and sorting gear. And I was kind of working on my bike on a bike rack, and a lady comes bebopping over from the next campsite, and she goes, "You look like you know how to work on bikes." And I'm like, "Yeah, kind of. I can get by." She's like, "I got this problem with my bike. I would love it if you would look at it. You're going to save me like a 45-minute drive into Steamboat and back." It was a long drive to get to Steamboat and back to get her bike fixed, but it was unusable. What had happened was she was like jamming it into the truck or something on the way there, and she had rotated the front derailleur. It kind of got not bent, but it got rotated around the bike frame. And so I was able to loosen it up, getting it all aligned, and got all of our gears working again. And she was just ecstatic ear to ear. And so we made friends and had lunch, and I hung out with them at the campfire and all of that night. And I had mentioned, like, I got this race tomorrow and yada yada. And I was a little bit bummed because I got a pack raft, and pack rafts are slow. And then she was like, "Oh, we got 2 kayaks. You want to use one of these?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to use a kayak." I'm like, "Really? I can use it the whole day because I got to check in early and I won't be back until late." She said, "Oh, no, we're not going to be using the kayaks. You fix the bikes. We're going to use the bikes today or tomorrow. You take the kayak and have fun with it." And I was like, yes. So I loaded up the kayak and I was super stoked. And that had not have happened, I would have been well down the rankings for sure.
But that is such it's just so something that would happen to you. Like, that is a Chip story. And sometimes I get irritated with like how much you're talking when we have to do other things. Like, I don't mind how much you talk when we're just out having fun socializing. But you don't really know a stranger, and it paid off. I think it pays off a lot, actually. I think sometimes I want to be more like that. So, but I also have a picture of that lake that I'm going to share right now. It just looks like a beautiful area. Before we talk about specifically the race, what about the environment there? Like, what was the elevation that it started at? Was it mountainous, steep mountains, medium mountains, foresty? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see by the photo, the state park area was relatively flat and rolling. It wasn't deep ravines or anything like that. I had mountain biked around that area just to get some exercise the day before. Now you're starting to get into it. Yeah, see, just outside the park to the north are some pretty darn steep, rugged mountains. And so you see that CP, like we're like climbing on all fours up a hill of scree to get to that. Like I was super surprised. And we didn't start off with this, but normally in adventure racing, when you sign up for an 8-hour race, you're thinking this is going to be people and their kids, and people might have their dogs with them. It's laid back, it's easy. The maps are CPs are going to be right off the trail. So I literally came into this with my guard down, thinking I'm just going to be out enjoying myself, having fun with friends in the woods. This is not a big deal. And then I got to later in the race, as we'll be talking, this was like one of the hardest races I've done in a long time.
Well, I think that does speak to the question of shorter races or longer races. Which one's harder? You know, a lot of people think, oh, a multi-day race, I can't do that because these smaller races are so hard. But
Yeah.
I actually think the shorter races are harder than the longer ones in a lot of ways. Mostly the pace is so much quicker, but you can get into why you thought this was so hard. But one more question before we get into that. What did you do to prepare? I hope, since you said you didn't rest enough starting the Cowboy Tough, I hope you took some days off between the Cowboy Tough and the Bears Ears. Did you? And
Cowboy
did
Tough,
that
I
pay
was
off?
dumb. And again, people get into overtraining, and I guess maybe it's just the endorphins or whatever. But like Cowboy Tough, like 2 days before it, I went on like a 2.5, 3 hour bike ride because the trails are so much fun. And I'm out there by myself. I ain't got nothing better to do. The internet stinks, and I'd done my job. I was like, I'm just gonna go out mountain biking riding. This is fun. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with biking. I'm gonna go for a trail run. And I'd picked a trail that was too hard and too long, and it ended up being like 2.5 hours. And when I say trail running the downhills, hiking the uphills, but I just went a lot further and longer than I was expecting, and I was still carrying a big pack. And so yeah, I went into Cowboy Tough just whooped. Like I just right out of the gate, my legs felt like noodles, and I was like, I'm a
Yeah,
dumb.
and then you did the race.
And then I did that.
Then
But
what
this
did
time
you
for
do?
Bears
Yeah.
Ears, I was like, not making that mistake again. And so I don't think I did any running for 2 days leading up to it. I'd done a big hike maybe 3 or 4 days ahead of time, but at a very reasonable pace. I wasn't pushing, I wasn't running. And I did go, you saw the lake in that photo. I did do a bike ride around the lake, just circumnavigated the lake, which there was like no elevation. It was just a little bit here and there. So it's just a relaxed bike ride. So I was trying to let my body recover because I knew I wanted to push hard. I mean, even though it's an 8-hour race, I think it's going to be easy. You still want to go hard and fast. That's like you said, the pace. Like a 24-hour race, you got to regulate everything. 8 hours, it's just blow it out. You barely even need to carry food with you. It's just like you can just blow through an 8-hour race. If you get a blister, who cares? Don't even stop and fix your feet. Just push through the pain and deal with it later. So I knew I was going to go hard and fast in the race, and I knew it was going to be hot. That was a difference.
Well, you can bonk at any length of race. So I do feel like you can push harder, but you still have to regulate yourself. But one question I don't think you answered was, what was the elevation of the race?
I honestly don't remember. It was lower than
Lower than Colorado.
my gut tells me 7 or
8,000.
8,000 feet, something
Yeah.
like that. I don't think it wasn't as high as Breckenridge. It didn't feel high. It wasn't,
Well,
it
is
didn't
that
feel like it was
because,
up in the mountains. It felt like it was kind of in the valley between mountains, you know.
and it might not have felt high because you were acclimated for sure by then. You'd been out there a few
Right.
weeks already. Okay, so then tell me the flow of the race. Like how many legs and what options were you given at the start of the race? And did you get your maps? When did you get your maps?
Sorry, I was trying to look up the elevation real quick.
I'll look that up. You
They
tell us
gave
about.
they gave us the maps the morning of the race. They did give us, I had enough time with the maps. I could write all the clues on the maps and everything. So it wasn't like one of those hand you the maps and go. Maybe I had 45 minutes or something like that. I mean, there was the race brief in there as well. It was comfortable. It wasn't one of these like super early wake ups or anything like that. Yeah, so I had time, and like I taped the maps together as you like to do, where now it's like one map instead of 3 different maps. They were on Cal Topo with 1/24,000 scale, so I'm very familiar with Cal Topo, as those of you I know about our virtual races and my Cowboy Tough stuff. So like these are my maps. Like so I felt super comfortable with the maps. Yeah.
So I think you need to share the maps again. and show them what you mean. Like, I love taping maps together. If they're small maps and you don't have that many and they're not printed, front and back, you can tape your maps together where they overlap, and then you're never wondering, where should I flip maps? And that's just a really simple but useful thing to do. Not every race even makes that possible, but I think it's super helpful. And so you have 3 maps, you
Right.
tape them together into one map.
Yep.
And so yeah, so
So for
show me
those
where
of
the
you
start
on
was and
YouTube,
what were your options.
well, I was going to show the map. So for those of you who watch on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, go back and watch the YouTube, and I'll show you how I connected the maps together. Basically, you cut off the top of one map, and then you overlay it on the next one. So basically, the roads line up perfectly, and then you tape it on both sides so it's durable. And you basically make it so everything is on one map. And luckily, she printed it on Write and Rain paper, so it's super durable paper. She did it right. I mean, these maps can get wet, they can be folded and everything, and they're very durable. So you almost don't need a map case. It wasn't expected to rain, even though we did get rained on. I don't think I even put the maps in a map case. I just had them in my hand and on the bike, which worked out really well. I love it when race directors do good maps, like quality, durable maps.
Yeah, and I want to say, while in case you're just listening, if you're looking, I'm looking at the map and I can see that you have highlighted the CPs and you have written the clues on the maps. I just want to say also, while it's kind of obvious in this scenario, you wrote the clues so that north is up.
Yep.
You'd be surprised that that's actually important sometimes. If you put your writing another way and you have your map folded and then you kind of forget which way is north. We've made that mistake before. So you wrote your clues north up, and you don't have a route highlighted in here. Why didn't you do that?
That's a good question. For whatever reason, I decided not to. I think it was because it was basically straightforward. The paddle, I was just going to go around. I went around counterclockwise, and I don't remember why. I just had to pick a way. I think it was like the way the wind was blowing, or I didn't want the sun in my eyes. Usually that's how I pick my paddles, is which direction's the wind and where's the sun. And so I probably was assuming, as the sun's rising, I don't want it in my face, but I don't remember why I did it. I think it was mostly wind. The bike, if you look at the middle of the map, we basically only had one way up on the right and one way up on the left. So there really wasn't a lot of route choices on the bike. You had to do both if you're clearing the course, and I was going to try to clear the course.
Let me make sure I understand. There was a paddle leg, a bike leg, and a trek leg. So 3 legs?
No, it's actually 4.
Okay.
So there was a paddle. Okay, so let's say you're at the start finish. You had a choice. Go do the paddle section now. You had 3 trekking points that you can get from the start finish on foot, or you can get on the bike and head north and do the bike section up to the north transition area. Once you get to the north transition area, that's the trek section, the real trek section, which was the crux of the race. And
Okay,
Jessica mentioned this in the race brief. She basically said,
you knew it was going to be the crux.
Yeah, she warned us. She was like, basically, the checkpoints down here in the bottom are pretty easy. When you get up to that trek section, I designed that for the tough racers. So if you're new to adventure racing, consider giving up some of these northern trek points, because that's designed to be hard. And she basically said, I designed this with like 3 or 4 racers in mind. So this was just to kill the top teams.
So what order did you do it in, and why?
So I had the choice of basically doing the trek first or the paddle first. I was no chance I was doing the bike first. So I think I was more concerned about the wind. I just wanted to get the paddle out of the way. And so I went ahead and cleared the paddle section. One thing that was really interesting, I was out there with another fellow, I think his name was Jason, on a pack raft. And the kayak was way faster than the pack raft. Like, he started off in front of me, and I slowly caught him. And then we both realized some of these checkpoints, we can kind of drop the raft and run down the beach, or drop the kayak and run down the beach and get them. So we had to make a decision. Do we get these on foot or by paddle? And so it was really kind of fun. We were kind of side by side there for a while, and both of us were trying to figure out how to run and do these things. So it was really funny. Like the first one, the CP5, we both kind of ran down to it. He ran further than me, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. And we tried to duplicate the same thing at the CP4. We drop the boats on the edge of this little beach, and we go running around the corner, and all of a sudden it's all these trees down over the water. We're just having a leapfrog and up and under and getting stabbed by driftwood and had to get our feet wet. It was horrible. So we're okay. Now we got to reassess here. These beaches are not all runnable. But it was kind of fun. You can kind of see it was a big lake, and we had a lot of choices, like going from coming through this little break in the islands. How far do you come down on your boat before you drop the boat and start running? And so I'd say I came down probably about the middle and ran down and got it and came back, because then you start shooting south. Go to the tip of CP2, ran all the way down and got it and ran back. So it's really kind of neat. It was like a trek and paddle section, trying to be most efficient.
And there was no reason to consider portaging to get CP3?
Didn't help. No, there was a little bit of elevation up and over, and it made sense. Now we did have to walk the boat through the middle, but no, it didn't make sense to portage up and over to CP3. I think the running down the beach was the better option.
Yeah.
Either way, it was a beautiful paddle. The weather was great. Sun was out. The wind wasn't too bad. There were some boats, but early in the race, there wasn't as many boats. By the time I got over here to CP1, I can't remember, maybe I'm hour and a half into the race. Now there's wakeboarders and waves, and the people are starting to wake up and do stuff. So I was glad to be off the water before everybody else got on the water, because there are power boats on this lake.
Yeah, so I also think that you wouldn't necessarily ever want to leave a paddle for last, because it's like there weren't many options of points to drop, or you don't have as much ability to change your speed in a boat, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Right.
So I don't think you'd ever want to leave that for last. I think I would have wanted to get that out of the way too, because it's the wind, and it's just not our favorite discipline.
No.
So, all right. So what'd you do next?
It's so easy to cut the paddle stuff off too. I was like, if I just clear the paddle, then I'll have to figure out something else to cut. But okay. So next up, as I'm in the paddle, I'm looking over the maps. You have time to really think through your strategy. I decided to leave these 3 easy checkpoints. Easy meaning, they're near the trail and not too hard. You just have to run out and get them. I decided to leave these for the end of the race. I wanted to go ahead and get as far away as I could, get the really hard, cruxy stuff done. And then if I had time to get back to the finish, I'd go get these other easier points. So that was kind of my strategy on this. Again, our teams did all kinds of things in all different orders. A bunch of people took off on the bike first, so I thought that was really interesting. They were going to leave the paddle till late in the day. So I was like, no way am I doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on the bike, as we leave the TA, basically the goal of the bike, basically, she put some checkpoints on 2 different routes. The idea was to get you to the next TA and back. So there wasn't really any course strategy. You had a choice. Am I going clockwise or counterclockwise, right? I made my first error in the race right then. The idea, the smart person who is doing the strategy correctly realizes it's a lot easier to ride uphill on a paved road than on a baby head 4-wheel drive trail.
Yes.
And so the smarter teams would have come out of the start and rode up the road. They would have gotten CP6, which was just like 50 meters off the road, and they just would have made it to that TA with no problems at all. Although there were some teams that had a hard time finding CP6, because it's along a long straightaway. You really kind of had to know your elevation, your distances, and your topography. And so some people couldn't find that CP.
Yeah, but given you have to climb uphill, either on cheap roads or on paved roads.
Or on paved roads. But the other thing is,
you didn't choose the paved road.
Yeah, this is a silly error on my part, and I could argue it both ways. The idea is that you can also come down a paved road really fast, and also there's no complexity coming into the finish line, so you could gauge how much time that you need to get back. Meanwhile, this 4-wheel drive Jeep road, you have no idea. Is it pitted, ruddy? There's some checkpoints on there that aren't so easy to find, and coming down baby heads. It's hard going up, but it's also like it's dangerous going down fast. So early in the race, I was thinking it was the worst idea ever, and then later in the race, I was kind of happy. Like, that passed Chip gave future Chip an easy ride to the finish because I was late by far and I needed to go fast.
So you would do it that way again?
I don't know. There's pros and cons. I think the better strategy overall would have been get up to the TA on the road and then figure out the baby heads on the way down. If I could do it again, I did. For a couple hours, I was beating myself up because I'd made a major error in an 8-hour race, which you don't have time to recover.
Especially considering your skill level on the bike, you could have bombed down that little easier than say I would have been able to. Yeah.
But the minute you got out of that start finish area, things started getting hard. And so the checkpoints along the Jeep trail were actually quite difficult. You had to know where you are. You had to have your altimeter. You had to really be following along on the squiggles. And so even going up slowly, it was a little tricky finding.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that plagued second place team. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So then you got up to the crux, the trek.
So I made it through all the baby heads, got up to the crux. By this time it is hot and I'm worn out a little bit, but at this point in the race, I'm still thinking this is an 8-hour race designed for new racers, and this is going to be pretty easy. So I come out of the TA, and again, there was no what do you call it? There was no real easy way to look at this to see should I go clockwise or counterclockwise, etc. And so I think I just started off, and I go for CP14 thinking I'm going to do this in a big clockwise rotation. And sure enough, like I'm going uphill in the woods for like a kilometer and was like, holy smokes, like this is hard. Like this is, trees down and everything. And I was just like, holy crap. So that's where I kind of learned that this race is not going to be easy.
Well, I want to interrupt you just to say that it looks like it was designed for seasoned pros and beginners, which a lot of race directors are getting really good at now. So you can't assume an 8-hour race is for beginners. It looks like there is a lot of options for all skill levels. And though one indicator of the difficulty of this trek section is your maps are in 1 to 24,000 scale. And in an 8-hour race, I don't know that that's very typical scale. Maybe 1 to 12,000 sometimes gives you a lot more detail, and it makes things seem like things are closer together. Anyway, just an observation. So tell us what you did up there.
Definitely. So 124. So these topo lines, when you see them close together, that's pretty steep. But as you can tell, like if you're looking at here at CP15, like she put this point where there's not a clear attack point and there's no easy way to get to it because of the topography. You really just have to like burly, force your way bulldozer up this hill. And I don't know, like this area, the amount of deadfall was staggering. I mean, it was like just trees down everywhere. I mean, this is like one of these places they need to do a controlled burn because there is so much firewood out there. If this place ever catches on fire, it is going to go up in smoke. But going up this, I mean, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 topo lines within 400 meters. I mean, that was a big climb. And then you get up there and you're like, crap, I got to come all the way back down to go get this next CP. So again, if you're on YouTube and you're looking at the map, you can kind of look at the route. Like there was no easy way to get these points. Most of them. I mean, CP20 was right off the trail. That wasn't too bad. But getting from say CP16 up to CP17, it's you're basically, I mean, I think I came down this road and then went across the stream and hiked up to this trail and then hiked up to that trail. I mean, this is like big backcountry navigation across raw terrain with lots of topography.
So it looks like to me that some of the points are as much as, I don't know, 1.5 kilometers apart, and no clear attack point, like you said, makes it really challenging. And the trails, if that's what those are, don't look like they would have helped much either. That makes it, all those things make it sound really difficult, let alone deadfall. Deadfall is just so slow.
Deadfall is the thing. This is not just get your compass out and push in 200 meters and pop a bearing and run back out. This is slow going up and over stuff and around stuff. And, it was slow. It was hard. It was uphill. And again, no clear attack point.
Did you see a lot of
I
other
mean,
racers up there?
a few. I didn't pass too many people. I'd say maybe I saw 8 or 9 people in these really far away checkpoints. I think a lot of people went up there and went for 4 or 5 of the easy ones, but there's a handful full of people that are trying to clear the course. So like you see CP18, that was the furthest point away from the finish, or I'm sorry, the TA. And you can see here on the map, I mean, you got a very slight bend in the road. And then I think it was like a 350-meter push into this kind of subtle reentrant. God, the amount of deadfall between that, it's like every tree decided to fall down along that route. I mean, it just looks like you could just go in there and get it, come back out. The topo is not too bad. I
And
was
good
cussing.
luck keeping a bearing through stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah, keeping a bearing was hard. Luckily, I used it. We talked about this yesterday. I used an aim off technique. So I think on that situation, I aimed a little bit to the right of the CP by 3 or 4 degrees. I hit the reentrant. I know I need to turn left and go up. And then I was also watching the altimeter to say, okay, you've gone too far. That reentrant, it was not like a deep V reentrant where the CP is like right there in the middle. This was like one of these subtle reentrants. So 50 meters across, where it maybe 30 meters across. So the CP could be anywhere in there. So I got pretty lucky with that one. I didn't again, once I realized, I mean, I looked at the map and realized this is going to be hard. Then I saw the deadfall and the steepness of the terrain. Then I was like, okay, I got to be on my game. So I was trying to do really well on keeping the altimeter dialed in, keeping the compass bearing dialed in, and really following along where I was the whole time. Because I was like, this is not one of these races you sleep through. This was going to be hard, especially if I wanted to clear it. I kind of noticed about halfway through this trek section, I am moving way slower than I was expecting. I'm going to be running out of time soon. And literally, I did a really weird route around. It's kind of a long story, probably too long for this podcast, but one of the roads, I think I was here at CP20. I did make a parallel error here. There was 2 roads, because again, just because a road's on the map doesn't mean there are not other roads that look like that road on the map. I made a parallel error at CP20 that ate up like 20 minutes. And at that point, I kind of knew I can come around to the right or come around to the left, meaning east or west. The trail coming up from CP19 up to CP20, that trail was not a normal Jeep road. It was like lots of trees down and slow going. And so I decided to divert and come out the west side and get on that main road and just run the whole way, even though it was hot and I'm tired, but I knew I was running out of time. So I hauled ass back down to the TA, and
So a
it was
couple
a tough one.
questions.
Yeah.
I want to know how you managed your exertion level in there, but I also am curious how many CPs were there overall, and like what percentage of the CPs were actually up there?
I mean, I guess we'd have to count them real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 8. It looks like there's 8 in that. Oh, no, because 13 was a bike point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 7 on the trek section, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bike section. 3 on the trek near the finish. 1, 2, 3,
Okay,
4,
I thought it might
5.
be easier because I thought the CPs were numbered in order. I see that the CPs are numbered per leg, or
Yeah.
maybe not. There's a total
So,
of 14, total of 16. Oh, total of 20.
no,
Okay, I
total
think
of 20. It looks like,
20.
yeah.
And
So total of
7
20
were up
CPs.
towards the top. So it behooved you to spend as much time as you could there, even though you needed to manage your time getting back. And so how did your exertion level play into that? Like, were you just tapped out the whole time? Did you take it easy at all to save yourself? And what did you eat?
Um, I was pushing it. Normally my heart rate is what's holding me back. We train enough with weight and all that kind of stuff. I'm not feeling leg fatigue, and especially on the bike, I'm feeling real comfortable on the bike. So it's usually not my physical body that's like whining. It's always my heart rate's getting up into the, usually for me, it's telling me to slow it down if I get above about 155, 160. So that's pretty much what I was doing, is I was trying to stay actually pushing at that trying to stay right, basically pushing myself where I'm about somewhere between 135 and 155 on the heart rate, which for me is a lot. But I knew I didn't have any more races on the calendar until Worlds. And so if I'm going to burn myself out, this was the time to do it. With food, I think I did stay. I've been doing this fat adaptation thing, so I'm mostly doing meats and cheeses. I think I did have a block of cheese with me and some meat, but I think I did take in some carbs on this because I was pushing a lot harder than I normally push. So I think I ate some typical energy bar stuff, protein bars, just things that actually have some carb-based calories in it. Macadamia nuts, for example, or I mean, those are fats and stuff, but I was eating some carbs during this race. I'd say I probably had 5 or 6 of the energy bars, the carb related bars. So I didn't do the no carb on this race. And scratch, of course. Every water bottle had scratch in it, which has 80 calories. So I was doing a lot of the fuel and liquids.
I love Scratch. I wish we were sponsored by Scratch.
Yes.
Tell me then, how did you decide when to turn around and how much time you would have to get back? And did you follow your plan?
I mean, that's always really hard. I was glad that's where I started getting really glad that I had the road down. I knew it was all downhill. I could see the road was pretty straight. I had no CPs on the way back. It was just a matter of just go from there to the finish line.
But you had 3 CPs that you could still get once you got back down there.
Yeah, 3 CPs that I still could get. If I remember correctly, I think I gave myself 45 minutes because I wanted to clear the course. So I didn't feel comfortable like giving up something at the top and then I run to the end and then I'm standing there with 15 minutes on the clock and I can't go back up.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted to give myself either an hour or 45 minutes from the TA to get down to the finish and clear as many of those points down there as possible. But I was running behind schedule. And I'll go back and I'll share my screen real quick. And I'd made I had to change my plan midstream. I'll get into this a little bit. And people that did this race, if they did it clockwise, then they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Going from 19 over to 20 was hard. And at that point, it's storming. Like there was lightning and thunder and rain, and it had kind of gone off the rails a little bit. When I got over here to, actually, I came from 19. I went up the spur because it looked kind of flat and easy and got to this road. I thought this road was going to be a Jeep trail. I'm going to be moving fast, but it wasn't. It was an old, like everything is on the trees are down. You just couldn't move through this fast.
Yeah.
My original plan was to come in, pop 20, turn around and come around the east side, back down and around, right back past CP13 and hit the TA. That was the original goal. But once I saw how bad this part of the road was going to CP20, I decided I'm not doing that all the way back. It's going to be too slow. So I switched up and decided to shoot on this trail across. I had come down on that one from CP15. So I generally knew that side of the road wasn't so bad. Also, it kind of followed the topography a little bit. So I made a snap decision at the last minute and shot over to this main road. This was just a gravel road. And so I jogged this whole thing and I was burning out. It was like every once in a while I had to walk and drink and scratch, like you said, just to keep the electrolytes high. But I knew I was just pushing myself as hard as I possibly could to get back to that TA because I was behind schedule. I'd have to go back and look at the tracker.
Yeah, it looks like it was primarily downhill and maybe not too much longer. It almost looks like a toss-up.
Right. It just, whenever you change your plan mid-race, it makes you nervous and you're like, did I do the right thing? And also you got to think, I had already gone to CP15 and come down on that road. Like if that was my original plan, I could have skipped CP15, gone all the way around in a big circle, come back, got it on the way down, would have been a more efficient route. So I kind of felt like a ding-a-ling coming back through CP15. But again, that was the call I made. And I felt like it was the right decision at the time once I found out that road was pretty nasty.
Yeah. So how much time did you have left on the clock once you left that transition area?
I think it was, I know when I hit the finish line, which was also a TA, I had like 16 minutes on the clock. So my guess is I probably left there with like 15 minutes on the clock. I'm sorry, 30 minutes on the clock. I think I had about 15 minutes to get from the top to the bottom. I did have to refill water because I was out. I was dehydrated. I was like, I didn't take time to filter. But I talked to the volunteer. Well, one is I get there and I look around, there's almost no bikes left. I think there was like one team behind me, but this entire section is now empty. All the bikes are gone. Everybody else is left. And so I knew, I was like, I'm really pushing it. Andrea would be not happy with me right now if you were on my team. But either way, so I blew down this road. Luckily, I did all my measurement stuff right. I came around that corner and I found CP6 without any trouble, was able to go up there and get it, come back down. But it was tough because you're hauling butt down a hill. You're all excited. I was really watching the topography where you can see the topography. There's a little re-entrant right there. And I was measuring and watching the topography. So I was able to go in there, pop that point quick, jump back on the bike, and came screaming into the finish line. Now, I thought I might need to punch when you get back because it's actually a TA if you want to go from bike to foot. So I like swing by the finish line and I was like, do I need to punch? And she was like, only if you're finishing. And I was like, nope. So I just ditched my bike and I start running as fast as I can.
With
So
just 15 minutes left on the clock. And
yeah, and I looked at this, you know, if you look at it on the map, it's basically the squiggly line here, but you can tell it's more than a K. There is some elevation change. So I was like, basically, okay, this is 1.5K out, 1.55K back. That's 3K. But I'm tired. I'm already worn out. It's hot. I'm loaded down. You know, I got a pack on, I mean. And I was like, I've got 15 minutes to knock this out. And so literally what I did, I was watching the watch. I think I had 16 minutes. I had just over 15 minutes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to run out for 7.5 minutes and try to get this CP7. I was like, I'm going to give myself 7.5 minutes to get out to that CP. And basically, if I can't make it at 7.5, I don't care if I'm 100 meters away, I'm going to turn around and run back because I didn't want to be past the finish. But sure enough, I got to that CP and I still had like 35 seconds on my clock of turnaround time, punched that thing and then hauled butt back. But there were some uphills I had to walk because I could not get my legs to go any faster. And I was super stressed. I mean, it was one of these, I was like, this is the Shenandoah epic all over again. I'm going to come in with 17 seconds on the clock. But
so what was your finish time?
It ended up, I think I had like 1.5 minutes left on the clock.
Wow.
Coming in, but pretty much everybody was done. I think a couple teams came in late, but yeah, so came in screaming at the finish. And I'm just huffing and puffing and sweating. But I think if you watch the video, the funny thing is I punch and I hand in my thing to Jessica. I was like, my God, that was a hard race or something. Yeah. I mean, it was 3 times harder than I was expecting, but I was definitely glad to come in on time.
Yeah, well, of course, you're always glad to come in on time. But when you were choosing to get that one last point, I guess you could have gotten 3 if you had enough time.
Yeah, if I had enough time. Yep.
Did you know where you were in the standings or
no idea? You
must not have because you thought you had to get it.
I know. I was like, I am getting I'm using every minute on this clock because I wasn't clearing the course. And so I knew it was going to come down to points in time. And so the idea is that if I got 15 minutes, that's why I said it. I was basically at 7.5. I'm turning around and going back because it's not worth giving up. And I couldn't remember the penalty, but usually there's a pretty harsh penalty for being late. So I was like, I'm going to go out. I'm going to use every second on the clock. I was lucky enough that I had, you know, a 30-second turn. I made it within 30 seconds of my turnaround time. Yeah, this is all in the video too. I was talking to the camera, of course, GoPro in it because I knew it was going to be high drama. And I'm like, okay, I'm down to 1 minute left. It was pretty fun.
So one last question about strategy. Like, did you think that maybe you should have left a point out in the northern section so that you could have gotten these easier points at the end? Because you left 2 points out there and you weren't able to clear, but
yeah. Well, that's the problem is with anybody that's trying to clear the course, you give up points at the end. Because if you think you can clear, so the idea is that if I would have let me go back up to the most northern point, like the one to give up probably would have been CP 18 or something like that. but I would have been giving it up 2.5 hours before the end of the race. So I may have come in and had 30 minutes on the clock. Meanwhile, I got this point that I left way out there. So I think if you're a top team and you're going to try to clear a course, it's one of them. You clear it until you can't clear it, and if you've got to give up some points at the end, then give up the points.
So really cool that there were points at the end close to the finish line. I love races like that because it lets you take every last minute that you've got to do your best. I think that's pretty cool design.
Right. I mean, another way to look at it is I could have assessed it to say these points are relatively flat and easy. They're right off the trail. I was familiar with that area because it's right there at the state park. I could have made the decision to get those points right as I came off the paddle, since they're easy and low hanging fruit, and then work my way up to the top, and then just try to manage my time well to give up one of these harder points, hit the TA and come back in directly to the finish. And maybe I would have been able to pick up one extra point. So that's probably the more likely strategy. I mean, if there was another way to do this, it wouldn't have been give up the points at the top. It would have been do those easy trek points first, and then just be good time management coming back.
Yeah, but if you did that, it's harder to judge. The further the distances that you have to go, the harder it is to assess how fast you're going to be able to do it, I think. So leaving some close to the finish at the end would have been what I would want to do too.
Yeah, kind of buys you some time.
Yeah. So then how did you win? I mean, I know you won.
Yeah.
When did you find out that you won? That's what I wanted.
This is kind of fun. This is always this drama at the end of the race, right? So I come in and of course everybody wants to know what I got, because nobody knows what the standings are. So everybody's talking to each other. And so Eric and Kenny come up and they're like, "How'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I left 2 out there." And they're like, "You left 2 out there?" "Yeah, we did too." I was like, "Wow, that's cool," or whatever. And then they're like, "Oh, we got you this time." Because remember, I had beaten them at the Cowboy Tough. And I was like, "Oh, congratulations, guys," or whatever. He was like, "Yeah, this was a tough race. Like I got whooped, And so we're chit-chatting, and because basically if each of us have dropped 2 points, but they made it to the finish before me, they win, right?
Right.
So we're all like hanging out and just chit-chatting, and we're pretty much are figuring out the pecking order ourselves. And then Jessica goes up to announce the podium, and she announces me as the overall winner. And I was like, whoa. When I look back at Eric and Kenny, I walk up to Jessica. I was like, I'm pretty sure we had the same number of points as them, and they got here before me. So I don't think that this is this is not my win, And she's like, "I looked at the punch cards. I think it's right." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. I'll take it, but just we need to assess this, but not in front of everybody." So she announces me as a winner and them second place, and then goes on to all the other things. And then so we're just kind of hanging out and talking, and she goes back over and looks at all the punch cards. And then I got to talking to somebody else, and so she was talking to Kenny and Eric, and it took a long time. And the funny thing is too, they've got this media group there. Like they've got these guys that want to like make a documentary. And so they had drones and these big video cameras, and they're sensing this drama. And so they're all up in our faces, and they want to get their reaction and my reaction. And it's just a lot of fun. I'm trying to ignore it, just catch my breath and, rehydrate and eat some food. And then she comes over or they came over or something. And what had happened, and actually, let me do the screen share again, because I can tell you exactly what happened. You saw how I taped the maps together, like you taught me to do. And but if you look at this, CP11 is right on the fold, or very near the top of the map.
Yeah.
And I think what they did when they came out of this transition area, they had gone the correct direction, I believe, right? They came up the road and they're bombing the hill down. And they totally, in flipping the map and trying to figure this out, they totally blew past CP11 and missed it, just on accident. They had no idea. They didn't even look for it. They just blew right by it. And so they get to the finish line, think that they've cleared it other than 2 points on the paddle, I think they said. Meanwhile, they had this checkpoint up there that was hanging out there that they didn't see. And so that's the
teaser for our next race ramble, which is going to be you interviewing me. I did that same mistake with a CP with the same exact number. So maybe that number, CP11, is,
You got to go back and get it.
I did. I know
At
that
least you
feeling.
caught
It
it before the
cracks,
finish line, you know?
yeah, that cracks me up that it's the same number.
Yeah. So,
Wrong.
but either way, we had fun. We're all friends, and I know Kenny had to go, but Eric and I went out with another fella from the race, and we went out and had drinks and dinner and hung out, and then rode Steamboat the next day. So it was like one of them. It's friendly competition. These are all really good dudes.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And we don't have much time left, but we talk about how different race companies, race directors, race designers have a different feel for them. And I was
Yep.
looking at 361 Adventures. They also do the FIG in Kentucky. So they're another race company that's done things all over the States. I think that's pretty cool. Was there anything you picked up on that was unique to that race organization? I know it's I guess the only race you've done from them, but anything that stands out?
I mean, it's kind of like if there's no problems, then it's a good race, right?
Yeah.
Logistically, everything was fine. The volunteers were nice. They had food at the end. The maps were rock solid. All the CPs were placed properly. Course design was great. I appreciated the fact that it was hard. I like look forward to a challenge. I didn't know that I was going into one of the hardest nav races that I've done all year.
Yeah.
But either way, I adapted and overcame. But I thought it was a really good design. It was efficient from the standpoint of she didn't have to move our bikes or lug our gear anywhere. We basically could TA out of our cars. And so from keeping costs down and keeping the race affordable and accessible to the masses, it was a beautiful course design. I mean, I think she's just a really good racer herself, and she knows how to make races hard and make them easy. And she was explicit. I just didn't believe her, but saying, "Hey, the ones at the top are going to be hard, and the ones at the bottom are pretty easy. So don't kill yourself up there."
Yeah.
I just
So,
didn't. The deadfall is what really had me by surprise.
yeah, that's such tough terrain.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, so I want to get into gear just really
Sure.
briefly, if at all possible, if you can be brief. And we've met a lot of people this year. We met Courtney Spratt at the Expedition Colorado, who's the owner of Bikes Direct.
Or
And you have
Motobecane bikes direct, yeah.
You have a Motobecane bike now that I know you used in Expedition Colorado, you used it in Cowboy Tough, and now you used it in the Bears Ears. What do you think of the bike? How did it work for you?
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's much lighter than all my other aluminum bikes. I was riding the aluminum rock hopper, which that's a good bike too, but just going to carbon fiber. All the components, it's a Motobecane Taz, and there might be something else. It's basically a 29er hardtail with all SRAM high-end Eagle GX components, 1x12. The only thing I had to do to the bike when I got it, I did take off the big knobby tires that comes on almost every single bike, or these knobby downhill tires. They're very, very heavy. And I put on a Maxxis Icon on the back, and I put on a Maxxis Forecaster on the front, which stripped another 1.5 pounds, almost 2 pounds off the bike. It did come tubed, so I converted it to tubeless, which that came with the bike is the little kit to make it tubeless. I just had to put in the 2 ounces of goo in each tire. The cable on the dropper post was a little bit too long, cable housing, so I shortened that a little bit. Other than that, the bike has performed flawlessly. It's such a new bike. My only concern, they don't have a derailleur hanger manufactured yet. So if that thing rips off, I'm done, and I can't put on another. So that's my only complaint. I wish they would come up with a derailleur hanger. But I think the bike was only $1,800. I mean, literally a bike of this caliber with those components would have been $3,000, maybe even $3,500. My Chameleon hardtail Santa Cruz aluminum bike was over $3,000. So I think for adventure racing, I think some people should really look at Motobecane. The frame is the only thing that's like not name brand. Everything else on that bike is name brand high-end components, and I'm very impressed with it.
That's awesome. And one other gear question, because you're kind of into knockoffs, or it seems like it now that you've got sort of
frugal
a knockoff bike. maybe it won't be considered knockoff very long if it's performing that well. That's really great.
All the bikes are made in China or Korea, or none of them are made in America. No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, there's
they're
some
all
bikes made in
knockoff.
America. They're $10,000, but you lift up your Santa Cruz, it's made in China.
Yeah.
So the idea is that I don't care what the name is. I want a quality bike. And now that I've sat next and had Thai food with the owner, I'm chummy with her now. So you know what? It's not a knockoff.
Yeah.
So somebody that's an entrepreneur in Colorado trying to provide good, affordable bikes to our community. So I really appreciate it.
But your shoes, on the other hand, are definitely a knockoff.
They're definitely a knockoff. Yes.
How are they holding up? I think you have been wearing the Bronax, and
Bronax,
they're an
yes, off of
ultra,
Amazon.
yeah, they're an ultra knockoff. And tell me how they've lasted, and you still wearing them?
Yes. This has blown my mind. I literally thought if these $40 shoes last half as long as Ultras, I'm winning. They have lasted, like, I literally just am now retiring my first pair of Bronaxes because I have worn the sole all the way down to where the cushion's showing. They've worn evenly. The padding or the cushion in the heel, like I felt like my Ultras, the cushion after a period of time kind of gives out and gets squishy. It like feels like you're hitting the ground. The Bronaxes haven't done that. I haven't noticed any change. Like if I put on the new pair and the old pair, I almost don't notice a difference. The outside of the shoe held up, like on Ultras, for example, on the side where your toes bend, there's some problems with it there where it'll it's just the siding kind of comes off. These have been durable all the way around.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about them, which it may be because I did a lot of water in one of these races. I think it was Croatia, and it was raining for 50 hours. The insert inside the shoe kind of slid back and kind of crawled up a little bit on your heel. So I could kind of feel my toes hanging off the front of the insert. And it didn't really cause any problems. It was just a little tiny bit uncomfortable. And I'd move the insert back down and then it would slip back up. But then now that the shoes aren't wet, I mean, I pulled it all out, let it dry and everything and put the insert back in. I've never had it happen again. But in the expedition, twice I had to remess with the insert. But that's minimal.
So,
I mean,
how many pairs of Bronax shoes have you owned? And they're all performing the
third. I just bought my third because one needs to be retired because they're, again, I've worn them out. They've been in like 3 expeditions now and I train with them every day. So when I go on Expedition Africa, I'm going to have 2 new sets of Bronaxes. That's the other nice thing about them. I don't feel like they need to be broken in. And maybe it's just because I got Flintstone feet and I walk around barefoot. But when I buy the new one, they feel just like the old one right out of the box. So I don't get any blisters or anything. They're not like need to be broken in. One other thing, though, I did try a different brand of shoe. Let me find it if I can find it quick. All right, I can't find it. I'm not recommending it for AR, so it doesn't matter the brand. But I went on Amazon and I found another brand of shoe. It was more of a running shoe, meaning road. The Bronax has pretty good lugs, not like the Ultra, but pretty good lugs. The new shoe was more of a road running shoe, and the cushion was it was a no drop shoe. Bronax has a little bit of a drop, and the cushioning, you could feel rocks through it. And so I did use those, and I think it was Colorado. I think I used them, and I was almost feeling like I was getting heel bruises. So I'm not going to wear those anymore. I mean, I love them for just day-to-day trail running and stuff, but I'm not going to use those
You're
anymore.
not talking about the Bronax. You're talking about yet another one you tried out.
Another knockoff shoe that I tried out.
Say, just a caveat, I tried some and they weren't good for me, but neither are Ultras. So I just needed a little more stability. So, always shoes are very individual choices. So anyway,
one other thing, Mr. Wicks came up to me at Cowboy Tough and said, I listen to your podcast. I got some Bronaxes and I love them. And he was wearing them right then and there, right? So he probably used Bronax and Cowboy Tough. And so we need to find him and see how does he like them after doing some races in them too. So
okay. Well, okay. Thanks for chatting about all of that. It's really fun to hear about. Of course, not as fun as racing myself. But I'm glad you got to do that. I'm glad you did so well. Thanks a lot. And thanks for listening, everybody.
And we'll be doing the Buff Betty race ramble very soon. So.
Awesome. Bye.
Well, see you later.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.